to insult the truth of our work and to misrepresent the intentions of the opposition. I could not believe, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister would set in motion his budget speech at such a serious moment in the lives of St. Lucians, not by apologizing to the St. Lucian electorate for the hardship he and his government have imposed on them, especially the poor, the dispossessed, the marginalized, whose services are crushed, whose living standards are brought down to greater depths of insecurity and misery. Instead, Mr. Speaker, he started his speech by attacking members of this opposition, announcing witch hunts, investigations going to look for Ajabless in Jufali or Majinwe in Minister's account, and all sorts of nonsense, while the country sinks into the abyss of a new dark age. Mr. Speaker, the central government's fiscal position is deteriorating. Mr. Speaker, preliminary estimates indicate a widening of the overall fiscal deficit to 116.9 million, or 2.5% of GDP in 2017-2018, from 69.7 million, or 1.6% of GDP in 2016-2017, a product of the incompetence of this government. Mr. Speaker, there was also a reduction in the current surplus from 92 million in 2016-2017 to 63 million. Similarly, the primary surplus fell from 89 million in 2016-2017 to 45.5 million in 2017-2018. Again, a product of this government's incompetence. Clearly, from what we have discussed so far, this United Workers' Party government has a proclivity, like I said at the last debate, for growing fiscal imbalances. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, we are cautioning the government about increasing debt and widening the fiscal deficit, because once high debt sets in, it is not easy to reduce it, since it is self-reinforcing on account of the high interest costs. We are stressing, Mr. Speaker, that reducing government expenditure and improving its efficiency is the key to improving the primary surplus and hence to a sustainable and stable fiscal situation in this country. We are asking this government to improve the rate and quality of growth, which acknowledges the linkages between poor growth and poverty reduction and employment. We have implored this government to fulfill its election promise to address a key challenge confronting us, that is reducing crime, which is impacting the social fabric, as well as investment and growth, and possibly increase migration. We are stressing the need for this government to pursue a calibrated policy response that addresses the real policy challenges in a way that preserves fiscal stability, as a massive debt makes it extremely difficult to finance security costs, which is a very troublesome issue. We are stressing that high debt makes St. Lucia even more susceptible to volatility, increases risk of macro instability, and compromises growth prospects. The major thrust of our response is on sustaining and improving growth and competitiveness, Mr. Speaker, because an effective circle of growth could reduce unemployment, poverty, crime, reduce incentives for migration, and create the fiscal space for dealing better with disasters. What is in that? For members opposite to attack members of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important to note that the arguments and concerns expressed by the opposition can readily be appreciated by any seminal figure in the field of economics, finance, management, business, politics, social and public policy, or any other related field. They could appreciate that. Mr. Speaker, the question which stares us in the face, but which requires an urgent response, is why is the government hell-bent on attacking sound advice in the face of danger? Mr. Speaker, the answer to this question is so important that at this juncture, I will give a couple minutes to invoke the authority of Sigmund Freud, as the answer is embedded in Freud's ego defense mechanisms. To this end, I will consider just a few of them that's of practical relevance and applicable here. displacement. With displacement, what a person truly desires is repressed and is replaced by something safer. For example, an aggressive impulse directed towards a threatening person, such as a boss or a political leader of the UWP, can be displaced to less threatening objects, such as other cars on the streets while driving home, or attack members of the opposition, because it is safer for members opposite to do so. Identification. Freud used the term identification in two ways. The one most relevant here is to describe the tendency to increase personal feelings of worth by affiliating oneself psychologically with a person, group, or institution perceived as illustrious. Some of them simply feel more important by being associated with UWP. Les hommes négociants. Go picha. So they feel that's the natural habitat. Projection. This mechanism is the one by which something that is true of a person and would cause anxiety, if it were recognized, is repressed and projected onto someone or something else instead. For example, the statement, "I failed the test because I was unprepared," although perhaps true, is converted into statements such as, "Our textbook is terrible," "She's the worst teacher I've ever had," or the test had trick questions. When a government has failed to deliver on the promises made in its last budget, like promising hundreds of jobs via DSH, it is converted into "the opposition is the reason why we did not fulfill our mad promises." Undoing. Undoing, it is as if the person is attempting to magically undo one act with another. It is a kind of negative magic in which the individual's second act abrogates or nullifies the first. For example, after killing King Duncan, Lady Macbeth compulsively washes her hands as if to absolve herself of the heinous crime. Likewise, a prime minister, after signing an agreement to give away the whole of Beaufort, attempts to undo the abuse by expressing commitment, love, and respect for Beaufortians in the form of jobs. Another example is stopping the St. Jude's reconstruction project for 2 years while people die because the stadium is not the best environment, and simple promises to build a new St. Jude hospital would resurrect them. As if for 2 years, doctors, nurses, and everybody under pressure at St. Jude's, they cannot use equipment that have been stored, people are dying, and then you can just say you'll build a new hospital. Still another example, Mr. Speaker, and I want to refer to a document that was introduced in the House, Mr. Speaker, at the last debate on the estimates by the member for Kaswi Southeast. It was a document written by a former member of Parliament, and he introduced it here. In my view, entered prohibited airspace to introduce that particular article in the Star newspaper of February. And that article entitled, "He who is double-crossed, crosses." And of course, Mr. Speaker, I want to remain outside of prohibited airspace and indicate that the article was on political acrobatics, and I want to say that the opposition is not interested in learning that skill. I think that the member for Babuno, in his delivery, he indicated that we should have been there to learn something or two about resilience. I want to assure the member for Babuno that the Labour Party has been building resilience many years ago. Because we have in our Constitution, in Article 5, 6E, which states that all members of our party is under duty to fight against all forms of opportunism in our party. And because of injury in times past, because many times people have come and use the Labour Party to elevate themselves to unjust dominion, destroying afterwards the very engine that had lifted them to unjust dominion. We have been building resilience in our party, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that this form of treachery will never endanger us again. I want to conclude, Mr. Speaker, and I will cast it in the realm of generality. That I, Alva Baptiste, born and raised in the People's Republic of Laborie, shall never get my consent to come anywhere as far as the formal business of this House is concerned and sit there where any former member, I don't care who he is, who have done untold damage to my people, for me to sit here and accept it. As if somehow, by elevating someone who have done this act, perform this particular maneuver to unjust dominion, that it simply erases the past. So I just want to make a safe landing at this juncture on that particular issue, because I remain out of prohibited airspace to make my point, Mr. Speaker. The next ego defense mechanism I want to accentuate is something called reaction formation. This mechanism is the one by which objectionable thoughts are repressed and the opposites expressed. For example, when the Prime Minister, who never supported the NICE program, would be its biggest champion in making it better and bigger. Another example, the Prime Minister, who has only contempt for poor people, say things like, I will reduce the tax burden on the poor people of this country, and actually increase it, Mr. Speaker. Intellectualization is the last one that I will utilize as I navigate the rest of my presentation. It's also called isolation of effect. Here, an idea that would otherwise cause distress is stripped of its emotional content by intellectual analysis. For example, one can minimize the distress typically associated with his or her house burning down by intellectually stressing the futility in becoming emotionally attached to material things. As it pertains to this government, some members who are abundantly aware that they are taking the country in the wrong direction would remain in the government by intellectually stressing that it is better to remain in government and be a minister, even though it is at the expense of the country, their own reputation, and future generations. Mr. Speaker, members opposite have great difficulty in separating fallacy from reality. And if normal rational approaches of the ego to reduce or remove anxiety are ineffective, the ego may revert to irrational methods called ego defense mechanism. One thing about ego defense mechanisms is that it falsifies or distorts reality. This is why they are maladjusted to the realities of the mood of the people. Their remarks are not sensitive to national mood. This explains why during the presentations of members opposite, you can hear them yelling with the usual UWP arrogance. The people voted voted you out, and they voted for us. So basically, keep quiet. Mr. Speaker, I know for a fact, through you, that the people did not vote for you on June 6, 2016, for the country to be the plaything of a ruling clique, politically involved foreign corporations and friends. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for a country to be in the abyss of lawlessness. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for a country to build a St. Lucian version of Alcatraz at Pigeon Point to incarcerate dolphins. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for the UWP to stop the St. Jude's reconstruction project. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to insult, attack, and disrespect public servants. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to use gas prices as a tax system to increase the tax burden on St. Lucians. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to desecrate Southern heritage. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to abandon the airport redevelopment arrangement with the IFC to veer off course and do whatever they want. The people who voted for you on June 6 did not vote for this UWP government to abandon the abattoir in favor of some fly-by-night project. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to privatize the OKEU hospital. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to stop the Viewfort Administrative Complex. The people who voted for you on June 6, 2016 did not vote for this UWP government to cause food prices to increase in the manner in which it is. In fact, the people of this country voted for you to fulfill the promises you made to them, as well as to take the country forward. For example, to eliminate VAT, put ching-ching in their pockets, introduce measures to grow the economy. All you have been benefiting from, and I made it clear in the debate on the estimates, the work of the St. Lucia Labour Party. Every single thing they have articulated, even in terms of official development assistance, we mobilize. They put it in the budget and they talk about that is their work. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister noted during his address on page 4, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, we made the conscious decision to restructure the tax burden. The consequence is that the tax on fuel and its deployment to road maintenance and repairs has directly benefited those who pay the tax. Similarly, with the airport tax, the people who use the airport will benefit from improved facilities. The taxes are therefore more targeted. This government is basically returning to the same pass-through mechanism which they match against in the orange match. That is the very same thing that you are introducing because you have no legitimate reason to match and mislead the people of this country into believing that there was $6.80 hidden there. And I made the point last time that if it was $6.80, you would have moved from $6.80 to $4 and not increase it by $1.50. The only difference with your mechanism is that you have made it $1.50 more expensive on each gallon of gas. They have increased the operating cost of fishermen. They have increased the tax burden on the poor, who have to not only pay higher prices for food items, but a greater proportion of the income on food. All things being equal, poor people would pay a greater percentage of their income on food. And so, they don't care when they put the $1.50 and the van that has to go to Bouton to bring foodstuff, they pass on that additional cost to the poor people at Bouton. You are burdening the parents who have to care for the children after you fired them from NICE. After you fired them from NICE, you are preventing them from surviving now by making things more expensive for them. They have created instability and hopelessness in St. Lucia. It was motivated by cheap politics rather than what was in the national interest. It is burdening the majority of St. Lucians, especially the poor, and they come there and jump up and celebrate as if something is so nice. But again, the psychological problems. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said on page 23, and I quote, "Let me begin with arguably the most vulnerable group in our society, our children. As we embark on our journey of building a new St. Lucia, it's clear that our current child protection system is not only inadequate, but inconsistent with our global commitments. Words, 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 empty words." Mr. Speaker, I cannot help but repeat that they fired thousands of people in NICE. They were on television crying that they can't feed their kids. But now the most vulnerable are the children that you prevented their parents from feeding. You fired them. And your interest is about children. Mr. Speaker, I made the point last year about discrimination between children born out of wedlock and those who are born in a marriage. I want to see a change in the legislation. You cannot have $200 for a child born out of wedlock And then the sky is not even the limit for those who are born in wedlock. For example, $200. I pay $280 a month for one of my children to go to school. That's just in bus fares. They have kids who are born out of wedlock who are attending that very school. And when $200 is the maximum, where is the fairness? I want to see a bill come to Parliament, and I have a lot to say on that when that moment comes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister spoke about the airport redevelopment at Hiwanora. He put a scope of works for the airport redevelopment, the construction of a new terminal building to handle projected tourism growth at a new location closer to the disused runway, which can give synergies with the seaport and new road infrastructure. The air traffic control tower and technical block built in the early 70s is in need of modernization. A new tower will therefore be constructed. The runway is approaching the end of its useful life, and the turning bay requires a realignment and extension. Mr. Speaker, the first thing you do for reconstruction of an airport is to do a master plan. But the master plan seems to be coming after the redevelopment. A master plan will inform the scope of works for the development at the airport. I have no problems with the Prime Minister trying to create the synergy between land, sea, and air. That's fine. I have accentuated that before. There's no problem with that. But the Prime Minister, who wants to redevelop Hiwanora, is now talking about development around the airport, DSH. The Prime Minister indicated that the opposition was not the one that hammered him out of the arrangement where he was going to put things at Sandy Beach. In fact, it was just a picture at Sandy Beach, and then link Sandy Beach with Maria Islands. That, of course, would never happen. The people of the South would never allow the Prime Minister to come there and desecrate the environment or put anything on Sandy Beach. But there are more compelling reasons from a technical perspective that are accentuated in this House. And the Prime Minister is fully aware that you cannot have development so close to the airport. So he has chosen a new site by Il Pirata. Mr. Speaker, this is a storybook beginning. That new site is more problematic from an aviation standpoint, because you have vertical surfaces, horizontal surfaces, and conical surfaces. You cannot have an international airport with wide-body aeroplanes and come near the airport and put, what are you going to put there? Are you going to build a marina, and then you'll have mega ships coming there, mega yachts, all kinds of things? Mr. Speaker, that will not be allowed in the immediate vicinity of an airport. Unless through Ojo Labs, the ships will come, and then when they get in closer to the airport, they will become submarines. You know? They'll become submarines. They'll be submerged, and they come with some new technology that the people can be okay. That is storybook. And the Prime Minister and this government must stop bluffing the people of the South, the people of Beaufort. Just so T.O. King will come with some construction site where they're throwing away some concrete pillars and come and drop it around to show as if something is happening. He better don't do that. You know, he better don't try that, because he'll have to put it on his head and run from Beaufort. If Mr. T.O. King comes to Beaufort with legitimate investment, that's fine. We will greet him with music and flowers. We'll have the police band to play for him. But you know, when you come there, de la mebala, and you want to come and monopolize people's lands, you ain't come with a cent, and you call yourself some investor. You're not no investor. You ain't come with nothing. You want to sell our passports, musty pay on the people of Beaufort, create your petty bourgeois enclave, and then our hospital cannot be completed. Not because there is any mess at St. Jude's, but because it is in the equine disease-free zone. What they want to take our hospital to do? What is it the Prime Minister really wants to take our hospital to do? Nobody will transform Beaufort into Havana in the 50s. Casino, prostitution, all kind of things. Nobody will take St. Jude's Hospital to do any brothel. Pièce moun bakay pon St. Jude's pour faire kaibolo by nom Chouval. Nobody will do that. Just leave in gade St. Jude's, a nice building, ek fait kaibolo epi, pour moun ki ka vini fait kous Chouval. That will never happen. We are not going to tolerate that, and there is nothing wrong with St. Jude's. Last time I spoke here, I told you all that's missing at St. Jude's is for you to tile the floor, put the tiles in the ceiling. Mr. Rosary sells chemical very close to the mall. Go and get some chemical and clean the building and start moving the patients and staff to the St. Jude's Hospital. Stop making people believe that there's some big problem with St. Jude's. As a matter of fact, the stadium is not an appropriate place to have patients, nurses, and doctors. Number one, I mentioned last time that a lady who went to the hospital died with a flu. She died. And subsequently, she went to Tapia Hospital, and they discovered certain things. Now, power fluctuations at the stadium is preventing them from using a piece of equipment which is a C-arm. It is a type of mobile X-ray unit. So if you have an elderly patient on the ward, instead of taking the elderly patient from the room to the X-ray department, you can come to the room and get the X-ray. If somebody has broken bones, come to the emergency room. You don't have to move that person to the X-ray department. But they cannot use it because there are power fluctuations at the stadium. Because it's a stadium. It's a camping site for doctors, nurses, and the patients. You cannot expect the doctors to perform miracles in the stadium. So what this government has decided to do is to go and spend money on the stadium, to keep the people at the stadium, with all the difficulties, instead of tiling the hospital, connecting the power, cleaning it with chemical, that's not a lot of money, and move the people to the hospital. And then you love them, and you want to build brand new hospital. The rooms are small. What rooms are the rooms are even bigger in certain cases, larger rooms at St. Jude's. No room was compromised. I want, Mr. Speaker, that's completely irrelevant. That's not even of marginal relevance to the merits of the case that I've established in this House. Well, I want the Prime Minister to prove that the rooms are smaller. Well, I'm telling you, the rooms are not smaller. And you're not going to take St. Jude's Hospital and do papi show. And I'll tell you and all your ministers that you all have no jurisdiction over St. Jude's. You all have no control over life and death in the southern part of the island. You know what? It's not you have not made up your mind. I'm going to make up your mind for you. That you are going to complete St. Jude's. And that's what it is. And we are not going to rest until our hospital is completed. Where we have friendly governments contributing, everybody contributing. Do you know what it is to attract official development assistance in this environment, Mr. Speaker? Very difficult. An IMF report showed that every year there is a reduction of 5% in official development assistance. And people in the various countries are getting more demanding. They want to see what you send overseas to other countries. And when millions of dollars are being disregarded based on the whims and fancies of politicians, I don't care on which side, we cannot tolerate this. That I will sit as a member for Laborie, as one of those who mobilize funding for the reconstruction of St. Jude's Hospital. I will not sit there. I will not sit there and do nothing. I live in the immediate vicinity of the hospital. And I know the horrors that the OJ people are going through. And you just want to compromise our hospital? Take it and do a brothel with it? Nobody will take our hospital for Kaibolo Eping. And we are going to stick to that. That's one time, one moment in history that we're going to draw the line. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister should have really thought about the consequences to signing the agreement if you are king. And I have said before and I'll say again, any agreement that is inimical to the well-being of this country, when we get into office, we are going to revisit that and we are going to get out of it. The international community is viewing developments in St. Lucia very carefully. And they are aware that the people of this country are opposed to that DSH deal in its current form. They know that. The international community is abundantly aware that we do not want Beaufort to be annexed. They are aware of that. So when it comes, no matter what agreement is signed, we are getting out of it. And that's what it is. You can't just allow Beaufort to go because somebody signed some agreement and we are going to bow before that golden image Nebuchadnezzar did. Not at all. We are going to claim what is ours. And a CIP program that was intended to help us in creating the fiscal space. Forget about our feelings towards it. As a cabinet, when it was ventilated, forget about the feelings. It was conceived out of the need to create fiscal space, to attract high-worth individuals, to help us improve the investment climate, to help us with education, to help us with health. And as we stimulate private sector activity legitimately in this country, we will have a greater pool of trained personnel to service that growing economy. In other words, the type of businesses we will be attracting to our shores will assist us in defining very carefully what type of skills we require. Mr. Speaker, I remember some time ago the Prime Minister came to this house and he made a statement before about the 43% of men who have only a primary school education. First he started with preschool and then he went to primary education, Mr. Speaker. And obviously, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister seemed to have been in a social coma for a very long time. That he was not aware that a social coma, social, political, and economic coma. Because for a very long time under UWP, less than 50% of our children who wrote the common entrance exam got a place at the secondary school, as accentuated by the member for Kaswi South. And you know what? Those who didn't make it, there was a big stamp, the Flabo stamp on their back that they are failures. So, you know, at that time, the banana industry was flourishing, so they were there. But when the banana industry fell on hard times, they became superfluous, dislocated laborers. Persons who could have become doctors as well. Persons who could have made a meaningful contribution to the country. And so, the uneducated youth of yesterday will become the uneducated adults of tomorrow. So those who did not access primary education then are the ones without primary education today. But you know what happened, Mr. Speaker? That changed with the Labour Party. The former Prime Minister has been criticized so much. Really set the stage for something meaningful in this country. When he built new secondary schools, and expanded existing secondary schools to ensure that every child had access to a secondary education. And I want to, of course, quote from a World Bank publication, 2005, which noted, and I quote, "The returns on education in the Caribbean are significant, especially at the post-secondary education, has a return of 21%. The return to education depends primarily upon the quality and quantity of supply in comparison to demand. The high return indicates that education is a scarce factor of production and that firms are willing to pay a substantially higher wage for well-educated workers," unquote. It went on to say on the same page that the variation of returns to education within the Caribbean can be related to the variation in supply of skills. 3 examples. 1, Barbados, whose successful education system is able to produce a high supply of skills, provides high-quality workers with relatively low returns, thereby contributing to increased competitiveness of Barbadian firms. 2, the low supply of workers with secondary education in the Dominican Republic has led to high returns to workers at that educational attainment level, 7% compared to 3% in Barbados. And 3, low production of tertiary graduates in the OECS countries have driven up the returns to education at this level. Example, 22% in St. Lucia, resulting in very high labor costs for firms, unquote. Mr. Speaker, a table on that same page provided some private returns to education in the Caribbean by country market survey. Shows that the countries depicted, Barbados, the Dominican Republic, Guyana, St. Lucia, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia was the worst performer in terms of competitiveness. And that was before we introduced universal secondary education. So that was a major achievement for us to now lower the returns to investment so that we became more competitive. Mr. Speaker, we provided more school bursaries and scholarships to the sons and daughters of toil to access education at all levels, thereby destroying privilege, equalizing opportunity, and giving to the children of St. Lucia access to education, making us more competitive today in post-secondary and tertiary levels of education. Mr. Speaker, it is well documented that the effective use of ICT is an essential ingredient for attaining competitiveness in both services and niche manufacturing sectors in the Caribbean. Many firms have utilized ICT to cut costs, improve communication with customers, improve logistics, overcome distance, and understand their competitive positioning. In order to foster an environment for greater and more effective use of ICT, policymakers would need to facilitate access, among other things. Apart from doing nothing to improve skill endowment, that United Workers' Party administration, have destroyed the laptop programs, which gave students access to technology. The CIP funds would have assisted the country in servicing many of our education needs so that we are going to be a more competitive destination. Another approach, Mr. Speaker, that must be recorded in this Honorable House is when we decided to make Vieux Fort a destination for medical schools, because it offers a tremendous opportunity for the country. In Dominica, for example, 8.3% of GDP, but in St. Lucia it was only 0.2% of GDP. So there are opportunities in terms of the impact it has on the economy. That's why we dedicated Vieux Fort as a home for medical schools. So we have been addressing ourselves very seriously to the issue of education, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to note, as I prepare to close, that the unpleasant truth of things in St. Lucia, under the UWP, have forced both supporters of the UWP and the Labour Party to enter into a new covenant for their mutual protection. Common sorrow could do something to reunite those who engaged in this political struggle in 2016. A shared anguish can be a bridge of reconciliation. We have a fight which is common to all of us against a government that is inflicting pain upon the sick and wounded. When healing depends on payment they don't have, because UHC will not be implemented under this government. And Mr. Speaker, I state categorically, without any fear of contradiction, that had the Labour Party remained in office in 2006 onward, universal health care would have been introduced in this country, where every St. Lucian would have a basket of health services to enjoy. We would have taken care of our people at home, and if they had to travel to receive medical attention, we would have provided them with the means to travel overseas. Imposing a curfew of fear to make St. Lucians quiet and obedient. Look at what is happening to press freedom in this country. Under the Labour Party, especially 1997 to 2006, there was freedom of entry into opinion markets. We had moved away from the days on the UWP, where the Minister of Broadcasting at the time, on the Flambeau, had to read the news package on Radio St. Lucia because before it went to air. They were sending SSU officers to search certain media houses. That's what was happening in St. Lucia once upon a time, Mr. Speaker. This government is slaughtering capital programs to pay for the extravagance of their foreign friends, chopping social programs intended to benefit the people of St. Lucia. This budget is a signpost of a journey which leads to a slow crumbling through the years until we sink to a level below Haiti. A gradual paralysis beneath which all the vegan energy of this country will succumb. This fight will require an effort of will by a community of people for a common purpose. Mr. Speaker, I believe that in this DSH deal, had deeply laid the seeds of social and political unrest. Mr. Prime Minister, you are forcing St. Lucians to mobilize themselves on new militant lines, and they will not stop agitating until this problem is remedied. There is no doubt that the sons and daughters of toil will not let you and Tioa King seize our land watered with our sweat. St. Lucians will resist being converted into slaves of Tioa King and Jack Lamb and others. The Prime Minister is hell-bent on destroying our national culture. And this is why, when I listened to the Prime Minister a few days ago deliver his budget presentation and talk about the FRC, I couldn't help but reflect. A government with scant regard for culture. For scant regard for culture. Look at the creative industries. You have no provisions for the creative industries. Not for 2018, 2019. You look for 2019, 2020. 2020, 21. Zero. Zero. Even the best among us are victimized. Look at what happened to Sir Derek Walcott. Look at what happened to the Walcott House, because the subvention for the National Trust have been withdrawn. So tell me, where is the respect for us? But fortunately, we have people like Robert Lee. Fortunately, we have people like Kennedy Booth Samuel. Fortunately, we have the Lucian brothers. We have Travis Weeks. We have Modest Downs. We have many soldiers who are still trying to ensure that St. Lucia has a cultural pulse, that is not a dead society. Because we have often heard that if you want to know what a declining society is, just check the emphasis on the arts. Any country without emphasis on the arts is a dying society or a dead society. It is the arts that breathe life into the twin nostrils of economic and social policy. It feeds development, Mr. Speaker. And the government must understand that. They have begun to march, Mr. Speaker. We have had two big marches, one in the north and one in the south. The largest demonstration ever in the history of this country. We had one at St. Jude's, another big march. And the Prime Minister seemed unperturbed. Unperturbed. Very good. Very good.
He's good.
Very good. Well, remain unperturbed and abuse the patience of this nation, and you will pay the price. We cannot rectify our present disorders by being passive with the United Workers' Party administration. And you have heard many times by courageous men and women, a government who aspires to an extravagant degree of power is to be opposed by collective action, not just by speeches. The speeches will stop at a certain point, Mr. Speaker, and action will be required. So we are in a democracy, Honorable Member for Grosile, through you, Mr. Speaker. We are in a democracy, and that is our political recourse. That's right. But when you have moved to a level of dictatorship, you want to, what happened to Riani? What happened to Riani? Look, now you all want to move into some type of regulation, and you all want to explore the elasticity of the meaning of what it is. Your intentions are clear. We come to this house, you all don't even want us to speak in the house. You know, you all attack us because you have no choice. You have no choice. No, I don't need your time. Mr. Speaker, in our attempts to evolve new patterns, new social customs, new attitudes to life, as well as to seek the material, cultural, and economic advancement of our country, our Nobel Prize winners must be made pivotal in that quest. It is upon our shoulders that will fall the responsibility of evolving those new forms of social institutions, new economic instruments to rebuild our country, which this UWP government has plunged into the abyss of a new dark age. The type of economic policies that are being used by this government is not even a distant predecessor to the type of economic policies that are resting in pieces in the dim distances of departed time. Sir Arthur Lewis' seminal work in development and growth economics, for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize, is very potent in formulating appropriate economic policies that would chart and direct the true and real development of St. Lucia. And the Labour Party in the new dispensation will pay homage to this dead Viking by ensuring that we become a model economic power in the OECS, a small economy. Further, like I said, I embrace the view that the arts are what breathe life into the twin nostrils of economic and social policies. For example, when we are implementing social programs that will prevent crime from taking place, including urban renewal and moral regeneration combined with a better living environment, we can easily understand how the Derek Walcott project on Grass Street, set in motion by the SLP government, can provide the architecture for the reconstruction of the city of Castries, ultimately transforming Castries into a performer's paradise, stimulating thousands of jobs in the process. The foregoing contains economics, literature, social policy, and social transformation, while paying homage to our intellectual giant, Honorable Derek Walcott. And of course, Sir Arthur, men who have shown distinction in the world of thought and practice. The British poet, critic, and playwright Sean O'Brien says, Walcott is faithful to his origins while speaking to the world, unquote. Even foreign policy could be distilled from the work of Derek Walcott. Mr. Speaker, how many minutes do I have left?
7 minutes.
Thank you. I think I'm on a right base, about to intercept final approach. Mr. Speaker, what is happening to the roads in my constituency, the roads that contracts were signed for after the budget of 2016? Up to now, people are holding contracts in my constituency to do work that this current administration have refused to honor. There's an individual who constructed a road, and up to now, there's one of them who actually executed his work prior to this UWP administration coming into office. And he was having great difficulty getting his money. So when we say that this government is callous, we know what we are talking about. We had CDP. We had a package of roads. The Mont-Leblanc Road, the Mont-Paul Road, the bridge at Béranger, the Majomel Bridge, the Majomel Road, the Catin Roads. All of those roads were already in motion to be done. By now, we would have completed the roads. By now, we would have completed the POM roads. But this government insists that they must make my constituency suffer. I remember in 1992, a certain individual contested elections for the United Workers' Party. Planted poles at Béranger under the Laborie bypass. Flambeau won the 1992 elections. And they gave somebody a contract to uproot every pole instead of taking electricity to the people. And that UWP candidate, after he lost the elections, he insulted my people. He said they were stealing his wife's things on the line. They were dogs. They were all types of things. And we had to endure that. But I told them, abandon every sentiment of irritation and rivalry. But within 100 days of the Labour Party getting into office in 1997, Béranger had electricity, Lahore had electricity, the bypass had electricity. And they had water in all of the communities that did not have. So I'm waiting. In the elections of 2006, 2011, and 2016, I've been extremely lenient with those that they have sent. Because I only said, flog them with the whip of Laborian pride. Flog them with the whip of Laborian pride. And I'll see which one that have the courage of Spartacus to come. I'll see which one with the courage of Spartacus that will come and tell Laborians that they must come and join you because you're oppressing them. You map out the history of my constituency, and every single thing has been done by a Labour Party administration. Our health center, our police station, our administrative building, roads, electricity, water, every single thing. But every time you all come, you all stop it. You all found a Laborie market in the estimates already, ready to go. Sure money from the Taiwanese. I did acknowledge the generosity of the member for Castries North. He's a little jealous that I'm mentioning all what Labour did. And you know, it's on record, you know, in this house, in government Hansard. But that was the member for Castries North, not the UWP. You all have a history, a brutal record of oppressing my people in my constituency. Well, I'll say something to this administration today. I believe in democracy, and I have told my people, irrespective of the outcome of elections, we must contribute fully to national development. That's the attitude, and that's why it's called the People's Republic of Laborie, because of the discipline. When we were being oppressed, we just formed our credit union. That is the key to our economic salvation. We just form our credit union. And then we pool our resources together and we do whatever we have to do. So we are veterans of creative suffering. We are veterans of creative suffering. So hule hulu. Elections are fast approaching. And stick to June 6, 2016, and do not read the mood of the people of this country. You see, a government, a party, a political party must want power, but on any likely projection of the past, that power will come to an end. And the degree of success at the polls will depend on your sensitivity to national mood. This administration has never been sensitive to national mood. They just feel that they have dominion over life and death. They are masters of the universe. They laugh. According to a great American orator, they laugh like wretches who laugh at the rights of humanity. But the day will come. I believe that the people of St. Lucia will respond again from the deepest resources of their pride and their dignity. They will respond again, Mr. Speaker. So in the meantime, stick to 2016 and do not pay attention to what is happening and celebrate. Celebrate. You know, sometimes I look at the member for Grosile, and in one of the ego defense mechanisms called regression, that sometimes you regress into a particular stage of your life like a baby where you were sucking your thumb.
Honorable member,
and I saw the member doing that. So, you know, honorable member, you need to be a man. You need to be a man. And some of you all need to tell the Prime Minister. Yes, 5 more minutes, sir?
I thought he was male.
5 more minutes, you said?
No, I thought he was male. Time to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will always provide effective representation to my people and my people in St. Lucia from the other constituencies that look up to me for compassion and for honest purpose. I renew my commitment to the St. Lucia Pledge, and I will do all within my powers to ensure that I contribute meaningfully to the direction of my country, whether in opposition or in government. May God take the wheel and control our country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.